Let's take a question now from Merrill, who would like to know about the REINS Act. Merrill, are you there?
Yes, I am. How are you doing, Senator?
Doing great, Merrill. Thank you.
Certainly. So my curiosity is regarding the REINS Act. What kind of progress are we making? Do we have more sponsors? And where do we think we're going as far as timeline for that? Next 10 years, 2 years? What are your thoughts?
Well, thank you, Merrill. For those who are not familiar with the REINS Act, let me describe what it does briefly. At the beginning of tonight's teletown hall, I described these two stacks of documents in my office. The few hundred pages of law passed by Congress last year compared to the 80,000 pages of law produced by executive branch bureaucrats in the federal government last year. These regulations and other regulations that have been issued over the years cost the American economy $2 trillion a year. Now, these regulatory compliance costs are not borne by the wealthy. They're not shouldered exclusively by big blue chip corporations who simply absorb the costs of compliance with those regulations. Those regulations, that $2 trillion, it's about 2/3 of the cost of the income tax system, all of those costs are passed downstream. They make everything that hardworking Americans buy in the American economy more expensive. Americans pay for those regulations in terms of higher prices on goods and services and diminished wages and unemployment. The problem with these regulations, the biggest problem, is that they're made by men and women who aren't elected by the people, who aren't accountable to the people at regular intervals. That brings us to the REINS Act. REINS Act stands for Regulations in Need of Scrutiny. And it says that each time there's a new major rule issued by an executive branch agency, one that has a significant impact on the American economy, that it may not take effect unless or until both houses of Congress have passed it into law and the President of the United States has signed it into law. Now, the House of Representatives has passed that into law each year, every year for the last 3 or 4 years in a row. And I applaud the House of Representatives for doing that. Sadly, the Senate has yet to vote on the REINS Act. I'm determined to change that this year. I'm a lead co-sponsor on the REINS Act in the Senate. The original sponsor is Rand Paul, a senator from Kentucky, who is also now running for president. Senator Paul and I, along with others in the Senate, are working hard to make sure that we get a vote on the REINS Act this year. Merrill, I wish I could give you a timeline for when I expect that to happen, when I expect it to pass. I can't be certain. There are those who still oppose the REINS Act, but I believe this is one of those issues that doesn't need to be either Democratic or Republican. I believe this is an issue on which members of the President's own party ought to join with us in supporting this need for reform. They too will one day be subject to the regulatory authority of a presidential administration run by someone not of their own party. I hope they will stand with us in protecting the right of the American people to live in a land where laws are made by men and women of their own choosing and not by unelected, unaccountable bureaucrats.